wasn't in the interviews. I wasn't in the interview at the Combine. I wasn't at his, in his interviews that he had with teams in private workouts. The question, that question needs to be directed to the people who were interviewing him. What was it about him that you didn't like? What was it about his preparation, like supposedly with the New York Giants and Brian Daboll? Why did you confront him? What was the issue? How was he not prepared? What does that exactly mean to you? What does that mean? There's a lot of things that are kind of like I said, there's a lot of information that only the teams can give you because they're the ones who passed on him. It wasn't me that passed on him. I would have taken the guy given what I know about him.
All right, let's get everyone else in here.
Listen, I think, first of all, Stephen A., there's a word you use collusion. I think we got to be very careful with the word collusion because I don't think, to me, the talent plays a big role in this whole situation. Because even when you brought up Colin Kaepernick, if Colin Kaepernick was the Colin Kaepernick from, 4 or 5 years prior, he wouldn't have been in that situation. I think this about Shedeur Sanders. If Shedeur Sanders had the talent of Caleb Williams, will we even be having this discussion right here and right now? Hell no. If Shedeur Sanders had Caleb Williams' talent, regardless of how everything is played out, the discussions we're having about Deion Sanders and all of that, he would have still been the number one pick because ultimately teams value talent. Over everything. Teams are in the winning business.
Hold on,
they are in the winning business.
Well, we got to hear from Stephen A. Go ahead, Stephen A.
I'm looking at it in the reverse, Woody. I'm not questioning if he were Caleb Williams, would this have happened? I know better. I'm not questioning if this is Jayden Daniels, it would have happened. I know better. What I'm saying is, rather than ask that question about the inordinate amount of talent those guys have, how about asking the question, it's deeper than me that it's in the 5th round? Because he's not a 5th round. That is a precipitous drop. And so when you remember when I said collusion, I said they don't have to collude. It's a universal understanding. They understand one another. They don't have to conspire with one another. They know how they think. It's about control. It's their product. And if Deion Sanders, and again, I'm not blaming him for it. I'm talking about the kind of excuses, the kind of mentality, and I'm going to prove it to you in 1 second. In terms of him saying what he said and them wanting to send a message, nah, we ain't having that. This is our league. Do you remember when the owners with the TV deal? Remember during the whole Colin Kaepernick situation where it reached the point where the owners, Lewis and Dane, got like $246 million apiece. Y'all remember that? For the TV rights deal? Do you remember the news that they were complaining about the $5 million that they missed out on per team, and they blamed Colin Kaepernick for that? Remember that?
Yeah.
They said, they got a check, Molly, for $246 million apiece. And were complaining privately about the $5 million they missed out on. This is how they think. And so to me, him falling to the 5th round, it's like you're sending a message collectively as a body.
A message to
we don't want this like that.
A message to who? To Shedeur, to Deion? And you said, what Deion said. What are you alluding to?
Well,
I don't know which part you're talking about.
I said earlier, Molly, when Deion said, if certain teams we don't want my son at, and we ain't gonna let him go there. They're like, who the hell you think you are?
So like he overplayed his hand by saying that. Got it.
Okay, hold on. So yeah. I want to ask a question to Lewis.
Sure.
Okay, and Lewis knows this. Okay, everything that comes with Shedeur Sanders, and we know what that is.
Yeah.
Don't you think that a lot of teams out there view that as a distraction as it relates to where this young man was drafted?
Yes.
The fact that he's starting out as a backup quarterback, and that played a role in this whole situation.
Standpoint of Shedeur had the opportunity to prove he was a starter, and he didn't, and that's what's frustrating. When you look at some of the objective ways teams look at the pre-draft process, there's the Senior Bowl, which is an all-star game that's competitive. Then you have the Combine. Here's our graphic, and then you have players that run the 40-yard dash. Again, none of this is outcome determinative. There are plenty of great quarterbacks or good quarterbacks that don't do everything, but he did nothing. And if you're the New York Giants, as Peter alluded to earlier, they fell in love with Jackson Dart for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is he competed. And then above and beyond that, the pre-draft process, guys, fundamentally is a job interview. We have taken countless players off the board for failure to be prepared for that interview. When you're interviewing a prospect, you're trying to project, can they lead us? Can they be tough? And we're going to pay them millions of dollars more. And when you do that, their fundamental character comes out. And then you put that all together, Greeny, it's very obvious that he had good ability, but there were some big bumps in the road in the pre-draft interview process.
Yes, I don't think we're saying different things. I understand the point that you're making. They did not handle the entire last few months well, and that worked against him. At the end of the day, though, and D. Wood, I thought you said it well this morning, if NFL teams thought he was a surefire, they wouldn't have made any difference. Now, you brought up
Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams met with one team and
Right.
told everyone at the combine, I don't necessarily need to sit with you. And guess what? He went first overall and is a franchise quarterback.
So what we learned from that is NFL teams didn't see it that way.
Yeah, like if he was that guy, if he was quote unquote him, as like a lot of people say, he would have won in the first round.
Right.
He would have been one of the highest drafted guys in the draft. But the NFL and all of these teams sent a message. And the message is, we don't view you as that guy. And so once that message was sent, now you start, the other aspect of Shedeur comes out. The stardom, everything that people talk about as it relates to Shedeur Sanders gets factored in. And what do NFL teams hate when it comes to guys who are not necessarily, frontline starters? They don't want distractions. That's how they view these type of things. And that's why Shedeur Sanders found himself drafted in the 5th round.
Okay, so we've said a lot of things. Lord knows a lot of words have been spoken about Shedeur Sanders over the last few days. Let's say some that I'm not sure I've heard anybody say. Considering how badly everything went for him, things turned out pretty well.
Yes,
Oh, for sure.
yes.
The NFL draft is not the end of a story. It's the beginning of one. This is the beginning of his story. Where he goes, and we just had all the names up on the screen a moment ago, that quarterback room in Cleveland, Deshaun Watson will never take another snap for the Cleveland Browns again. I'll be shocked if he does.
Probably.
Joe Flacco graduated from high school the year before I did.
Yeah.
Dylan Gabriel is not a prospect that people viewed in even the same category. I understand they took him before they took Shedeur, but I think there are extenuating circumstances in that. Kenny Pickett is on his 3rd team in as many years. I think Shedeur Sanders, if he is as good as he thinks he is, if he is even close to as good as his father thinks he is, I actually think he wound up in a great place where he has an excellent chance to be the starting quarterback.
I think you're absolutely right. They'll have a wide open quarterback competition. Now it may start with Flacco and Pickett at the forefront because they're the veterans, they have the experience, and the other guys have to be brought along. But if you're looking at it objectively and saying if he's as good as we thought he was before the draft, he can beat out Dylan Gabriel, Kenny Pickett, and Joe Flacco.
They had a great dinner after his visit with the Browns in Boulder, and the dinner included not only the coach and the owner and the GM, but Bill Musgrave came to that dinner, and Tommy Rees came to that dinner, and the whole staff. Bill Musgrave and Dion are very close, and that goes all the way back to their 49ers days. And you look at this situation, Stefanski as a coach, just pure football. Forget the fact we're talking about Shedeur and the pre-draft. Pure football. Stefanski has taken Case Keenum, and all due respect to Case Keenum, and they won a ton of games and got to the NFC Championship game. He's taken Kirk Cousins, and he has gotten the best out of him at Minnesota. Stefanski, for an undersized quarterback, might be the best guy in the entire league to work with this young man. And it's going to be on both of them to make it
And
happen.
Greeny, for 3 months sitting here, I said I thought Shedeur Sanders was Kirk Cousins. So I think from a football scheme standpoint, this is perfect. And if the 5 of us were running the Cleveland Browns, we would give every benefit of every doubt to Dylan Gabriel, who, by the way, was a quarterback drafted before Shedeur Sanders, and Shedeur Sanders, much more about them being the future than Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think, ironically, put all the noise aside from a scheme standpoint, a coach standpoint, Shedeur is in the best situation possible.
What do you think of all this, D. Wood?
I tweeted out, I said Shedeur Sanders found himself in a great opportunity because obviously you guys talked about the quarterback room. There's not a guy that Shedeur Sanders should be afraid of in that quarterback room, number one. But more importantly for me, it's Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski, in my opinion, is one of the best play callers that we have in the National Football League. I thought he changed his offense to placate to Deshaun Watson, but those days are over with. He's going to go back to what he used to do, and if he does that with Shedeur Sanders' skill set, it will fit him perfectly.
it becomes now about what Shedeur Sanders has inside of him, right? Because he's never been an underdog. Never had to make the team. Who are you now? Are you a Jalen Hurts type who will beg to find out what I'm doing wrong and then spend the entire offseason working on it just so I can be better? If you have that inside of you, you have an opportunity here. We're going to find out. It's the first time we've really seen this young man in this kind of position.
The irony of it is Tom Brady always talks about going 199 and being the seventh round pick or the sixth round pick and all that. Tom Brady and the Raiders passed on Shedeur Sanders 6 different times. If that's not a chip on your shoulder.
Greeny, go back to what Graz said, though. If I was the Browns, I was encouraged by what Shedeur said last night. I thought that was a great first step. I could have handled things better.
Đấy, mình cứ móc lần lượt như vậy là được. Tiếp tục móc vào cho đến hết. Mũi nữa đây. Tiếp tục. Cứ móc luân phiên như vậy là được nhé. Đấy, tiếp tục móc xuống. Móc nối vào đây và siết dây. Mình lộn ra. Đây. Mình gài cái dây dư này vào mặt trong. Mình móc cái phần len thừa xuống nhé. Cứ gài xuống như vậy là được. Đấy, được cái phần mũ như này. Giờ sẽ sử dụng cái phần len màu xanh này nhé. Mình sẽ móc nó vào. Móc vào này. Mình sẽ móc những cái mũi trượt lên. Đây. Móc vào đây nhé. Cứ từng mũi trượt một. Móc vào cho đến hết. Tiếp tục móc cho mọi người. Cứ lần lượt từng mũi. Tiếp tục móc.